Hi folks, it's Kate here from the Full Freezer, and this week I just wanted to take you through 3 of the most common home freezing mistakes that I come across. So mistake number 1 is allowing food to sit cooling on the side in your kitchen for a long amount of time. Anywhere over an hour and a half is not really a very good idea. The reason for that is because it's around that point that bacteria will start to develop in your food, and this is the sort of bacteria that could potentially cause food poisoning. So ideally, when you are cooking food for the freezer, you don't want to be leaving it out, sitting on the side cooling all day. You really need to be getting it cooled down nice and quick and getting it into your freezer as fast as possible, just to avoid any risk of making anyone poorly. Now, mistake number 2 is very much on the same theme. If you are trying to cool your food down quickly, I have seen quite a lot of people say, oh, it's okay, I'll put it in the fridge. Mostly I think because they've seen it on Bake Off. But the thing is, on Bake Off, there's no other food in the fridge that they are putting those cakes in, or in the freezer if they use the freezer. If you do it at home, all you're actually going to do is increase the temperature in your fridge and in your freezer and affect the food that is sitting in your fridge and freezer at the correct temperature. I really recommend against using your fridge or freezer to cool down hot or even warm food. Best thing that you can do is get your food out of the dish or the pan that you've cooked it in and transfer it into a cool dish. The bigger the dish, if you've got something like this where you can spread the food out, if it's a smaller quantity than this, the more sort of surface area there is for the heat to escape, the faster it's going to cool down. You could also do what I do with my son's dinner, which won't work so well if you're batch cooking and you've got loads of food, but if you've just got a portion or two, I actually stand outside and fan it a bit and let the cold air from outside cool the food down quicker. I wouldn't recommend leaving your food outside because obviously it's going to attract flies and other nasties that you definitely do not want. And then the third thing you can also do is, if you're happening to use something like foil trays or Ziploc freezer bags, you can put your food in. If the reusable freezer bags are heat proof, so I know that some are okay up to sort of 50 degrees, you can just let your food cool down a little bit at room temperature and then transfer it into the bags, and basically, put some cold water in a dish like this and carefully place your food in either your foil trays or your bags in dishes like this or in the bottom of your sink, just being very careful to make sure none of the water goes inside the bag, and that cold water will help to cool the food down as well. The third common mistake is people not thawing their food properly. There is a temptation to just get, a frozen lasagna or whatever out and just leave it on the side out all day, or frozen chicken breasts or whatever. Please do not do this. The recommended guidelines on how to thaw food safely is basically there are 3 approaches that you can take. 1, get it out of the freezer in advance, put it in the bottom of the fridge on a dish to catch any water, and basically let it thaw over sort of a 24 to 36 hour period. And once your food is fully thawed from doing that in the fridge, it will be okay for sort of another 24 hours or so after defrosting it. If you are not that organised, which I rarely am, you can also defrost your food in the microwave, as long as you use the defrost setting or a very, very low setting to just get it to start to heat through very slowly. The catch with that is that you do then have to immediately cook your food. You can't thaw it in the microwave and then decide you don't want it yet and put it in the fridge. So make sure, if you're doing that, you're doing it right before you're cooking your lunch or your dinner. The third way, which is my personal favourite, which I'm actually using at the moment for my dinner, is to fill up a dish or the bottom of your sink with some cold water. You then can submerge the food in it. So if it's in a Ziploc bag, that's fine. It should be sealed nice and tight. And you can just pop your food in the cold water and it will slowly start to allow the ice to kind of come out of the food. And I tend to find it actually forms on the outside of the bag, and then I can pick it off and freshen up the water. And it will usually thaw in sort of about 40 minutes. Sometimes it can take an hour depending on what it is I'm thawing, but I find that really effective. And if it's something like a lasagna, again, you know, you can fill up a dish or the bottom of your sink and just make sure that it's below the edge of the top of the container so that you don't end up with any water pouring into it. On a related note to that, there is a nice fourth hidden tip within the defrosting, which is some things just don't actually need defrosting. So if you have got a lasagna, you don't actually have to defrost it. You can cook it from frozen. The key is that it has to be cooked for usually about half the time again. So if you would cook something for an hour, you would probably be looking at cooking it for at least an hour and a half. And usually with that, I would look to cover the meal with foil, and then for the last 10-15 minutes, take off the top to allow the top to crispen up. The one thing that you do need to be careful about though, if you're going to cook something from frozen, is that the dish that you are using, if it's not in a foil container, if it's in a dish, it needs to be safe to go from freezer to oven, because some dishes, if they, you know, change temperature too quickly, they're going to shatter. So you do need to be really conscious of that and make sure your dish is safe. So there you go, folks. Common mistakes and a couple of ways that I hope that you can avoid making them. Take care, and I'll speak to you soon.